Who and why Linux? Here we will talk about who all are interested, willing and using Linux operating system and why they selected Linux operating system for the job. Let's jump in. Let us see who all uses Linux. There are numerous technological companies that uses Linux for their innovative products. These are the products that implement Linux for complex computation as well as networks. The first example is space robots. Robonaut R2 will be the first humanoid robot in space that runs on Linux, and it is designed to take over some of the astronaut responsibilities. The robot can be manipulated by onboard astronauts with ground control commanding it into position and performing operations. The Linux training from the Linux Foundation helps NASA developers ensure that R2 can be productive addition to the ISS, that is International Space Station. Next is smart refrigerators. Have you ever seen refrigerator that has LED screen? Actually it runs on Linux and support various apps as well. Also they have Alexa, a virtual assistant developed by Amazon that is built in. GE Appliance also showcased the Ubuntu powered refrigerator named Chill Hub. Next is high speed train, also known as Shinkansen. It is an English word for bullet train. It is a network of high-speed railway lines in Japan. Centralized traffic control, tasks relating to train movement, tracking, stations, scheduling, everything is managed by Linux operating system. The next one being Smart TV. Linux has become leading embedded OS for smart TVs. Smart TV operating systems has Linux variants such as Tizen in Samsung Smart TV, WebOS in LG Smart TV, Amazon Fire OS that runs on Amazon's Fire TV and tablets. Fire OS is a fork of Android. Again, Android is based on Linux operating system. Smartwatch. The Asteroid OS project has released version 1.0 of its open source Linux based smartwatch distribution. Pine64 by Pine Microsystem, a US based company which is into design and manufacturing, is working on a smartwatch which is estimated to cost just $25 with the name Pine Time. Self-driving cars. Companies like Tesla runs its own Linux distribution, mostly rely on AGL, that is Automotive Grade Linux. Automotive Grade Linux is a collaborative open source project that is bringing together automakers, suppliers and technological companies to accelerate the development and adoption of a fully open software stack for a connected car. As a matter of fact, Google's Ubuntu-based self-driving Toyota Prius has led the way, logging over 500,000 miles of autonomous driving with no accident caused by the computer, as per Google. Let us see which are the top companies that uses Linux as an operating system. In fact, the companies that has adopted Linux includes Amazon. It is an American multinational technology company based in Seattle, Washington that focuses on e-commerce, cloud computing, digital streaming and artificial intelligence. Amazon saved millions of dollars by switching to the Linux operating system. The other example is US Postal Service. Postal Service information technology officials have upgraded the 15-year-old mainframe-based system to handle more transactions and lower the cost of operating the system. The work to upgrade PTS, that is Postal Services, is a part of larger plan to standardize on open source and less expensive Linux operating system. Google. Earlier Google was using Ubuntu, that was a Linux distribution based on Ubuntu LTS. LTS we will see at a later stage. G-Linux is a Debian testing based Linux distribution used at Google as a workstation operating system. The Google G-Linux team builds the system from the source code, introducing their own changes. The Google servers are powered by Linux, Android is powered by Linux and Chrome OS is also powered by Linux operating system. NASA. NASA migrated key functions from Windows to Linux operating system because they needed an operating system which is stable and reliable and also that gives them in-house control. In case they need to patch, adjust or adopt, they should be able to. Keth from United Space Alliance, a NASA contractor deeply involved in space shuttle and International Space Station operations, decided to migrate to Linux and turn to the Linux Foundation's training program for help. Another example is Facebook. As per Chris Mason, who is the principal author of BTRFS and who worked for Facebook, said that the underlying infrastructure for Facebook relies on Linux operating system. Another example is IBM. In 2001, IBM invested $1 billion to back the Linux movement, embracing it as an operating system for IBM server and software. Linux runs on IBM Power Systems since 2001, when a team created a new 64-bit port for the Linux kernel to allow the operating system to run on PowerPC processors. One more example is New York Stock Exchange. The largest exchange, the New York Stock Exchange Euronext, is also running a Linux operating system. It is very important to understand why Linux is a preferred platform and is so popular. The reasons are very simple. Let us see those reasons. It consumes very little resources. Certain stripped down version of Linux consumes less resources. One of the example is Bodhi Linux, which has a minimum requirement of 500 MHz processor, 256 MB of RAM, 5 GB of drive space. Some other examples are Tiny Core and Microcore, which have even less requirement. It has a huge community support for troubleshooting. There are forums, IRC chat systems, mailing list, local language support, ask question answer sections by which one can get community support for Linux. In addition, there are a couple of sites such as linuxquestions.org, which is the biggest community, unix.stackexchange.com, Reddit r/Linux, and some distribution specific sites such as ubuntuforum.org, askubuntu.com, Linux Mint Forum, etc. It is customizable. You can customize your desktop environment, application themes, shell theme, scaling the display, tweaking the performance, and of course, customize distro as per requirement like Ubuntu Studio for multimedia desktop, Kali Linux for InfoSec, and many more. Linux is considered a very secure system. Features like restricted root privileges and saved file do not have executable permissions by default are some of its characteristics. Generally, Linux users are more technical savvy and hence understand the risk. There are numerous distributions like Linux Mint, Ubuntu, Arch Linux, Debian, and numerous utilities to do the same functions such as Thunderbird, Evolution, Mailspring, Hiri, Camel for email communication make it difficult for any malware to get propagated to the system. Linux has a huge hardware support. Linux supports multiple architectures, multiple processors, graphic hardware support, wireless network card support, sound cards, ID controllers, SCSI controllers, mice, printers, scanners, PCMCIA, card bus, express bus, and USB devices. With every Linux distribution, we can find supported or certified hardware support on their respective websites. No periodic reboot. There are very less instances when one need to reboot the Linux system. Reboot is required only when one installs a new kernel or update critical libraries such as libc. Updating certain packages will occasionally require a system reboot. However, this is really occasional instances. People who use Windows operating system will understand it better. Linux is stable. Linux systems are widely known for their stability and reliability. You can modify a system or program configuration file and effect changes without necessarily rebooting the server. In case a process is behaving abnormally, you can send it an appropriate signal using commands such as kill, pkill, or killall to kill the process or the application that is causing trouble. It is easy to install. You can create bootable USB drive for installations. Many Linux distribution provides live media, even you don't need to explicitly install it on the hard drive before using it. And certain vendor specific distributions are easy to install such as Ubuntu. However, some basic knowledge is expected when you install particular vendor specific Linux such as Arch Linux. Linux usage. It is used on various platforms, and that includes PC, that is personal computer, such as desktop, people who are not ready to pay the price for Windows operating system, or the enthusiast or with good learning curve prefer Linux operating system as their desktop operating system. Also laptops. With Linux pre-installed with the OEM laptops and the cost being reduced due to it, people do buy laptops with the Linux operating system on it. Especially students who have limited budget prefer it, and also people who are security conscious and are technical savvy prefer this platform. There are many vendors that provide laptops pre-installed with Linux such as Dell, Pine64 Pinebook, System76, Lenovo, Acer, Purism, etc. Linux is also used for high-end computing, such as servers. There are server platforms provided by various vendors such as Ubuntu Server, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, SUSE Linux Enterprise Server, Slackware Linux, etc. As a matter of fact, Linux servers are considered more stable and secure, and hence are the preferred platform for hosting various services. Mainframes. Linux on Z is the collective term for the Linux operating system compiled to run on IBM mainframes, especially IBM Z and IBM Linux 1 servers. Supercomputers. All the most complicated, most intense tasks are performed on powerful computers that rely on Linux. As of now, Linux runs all the fastest 500 supercomputers in the world. Another example is smart devices. One such example is smartphone. A very large portion of smartphones available in the market runs on Android operating system, which has Linux in its core. Other example is smart TV. This we already talked about in the previous part. However, such TV includes MI TV, new TCL Smart TV, Samsung Tizen, LG WebOS, etc. Next is in-vehicle infotainment. As we already talked about, automotive grade Linux hosted at the Linux Foundation is a project to create common base platform for in-vehicle systems. With more than 110 members, AGL is supported by a broad ecosystem of automakers, suppliers, semiconductor companies, and software and service providers. Mobile device connectivity has become a major component of the IVI system, that is in-vehicle infotainment system. Some of the examples are Sync for Ford, BMW's Connected Drive, Chevrolet MyLink, Audi's Connect Prime, etc. Embedded devices such as firewall. Firewall from vendors like FortiGate, Sophos, Endian, Untangled firewall appliances are some of the products that has Linux embedded in it. Router. Zero Shell Linux router, Intel routers with inbuilt security like UTM solutions are some of the examples of Linux based router. The other one being musical instruments. Linux is also used in IoT, that is Internet of Things. Examples are wearable electronic devices. In 1998, Steve Mann invented, designed and built the world's first Linux wristwatch, where he was named the father of wearable computing. Smartwatches, smart jewelry, fitness trackers, head-mounted displays are some examples of wearable electronic devices that uses Linux operating system. It is also used in industrial monitoring. One such example is Moxa Industrial Linux, also called as MIL, which is a high-performance industrial-grade Linux distribution developed by Moxa to help accelerate the industrial projects. MIL is based on Debian and the standard Linux kernel, which make it easy to deploy your applications on multiple systems. Security, reliability and stability and less cost, of course, are driving factors for Linux in industrial monitoring. Linux is also used for cloud computing. Cloud Linux OS is the distribution created specifically to be used for cloud computing. Amazon Linux is a Linux image provided, supported and maintained by Amazon Web Services for specific usage on EC2. Low total cost of ownership, flexibility, scalability, security and reliability are some of the reasons to opt for Linux when we talk about cloud computing.